We'll start as always with public comment. So if you wish to address the board under public comment, please sign in on the public speakerphone. Before the call to order for this meeting, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. We expect comments to be civil, disrespectful, or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. The board is not authorized to require open meetings law to discuss, comment, or take action at this meeting on any issue related to comment that is not part of this agenda. So I expect we got 3 people who want to speak, and however you all want to take it.
Oh, so who gets to go first?
Yeah,
How
yeah,
about if we go around the room like this?
sure, whatever.
So, no mic, right?
No mic, no.
Okay, that's okay. And let me know if you can't hear me. My name is John Marchetti. Are we supposed to mention who we are?
Yeah, you know the drill, yeah.
Yeah, I
please,
just
John.
wondered if the same as over there. So my name is John Marchetti. I'm District 4. I have 2 comments tonight related to environmental issues in Littleton. First is, what is the Environmental Stewardship Board's role in the trees that will be planted at Costco once the project is done? Will there be any requirements to replace trees that die within a certain period of time? And are the trees drought tolerant like the city forester recommends for our future environment? Second comment I have is, cities around Littleton are wondering if they really need a gas station and car wash on every corner. Lakewood has recently passed an ordinance that creates a buffer zone to limit new gas stations and car washes. Louisville and Denver are restricting these same operations to help the region meet federal air quality standards. It would be great if Littleton would do the same thing and take a proactive role in addressing this issue. I think that's it. So thank you for having me here tonight.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Gregory Sullivan. I'm in District 4 and I live in South Park 1. And I've spoken to you already a couple of times, and I just want to follow up with a couple of things. Well, I want to give you an update on the canvassing. I think I told you last time. You had the flyer now. I put that flyer on 1,800 households on their doors and 3 I have roughly 200 signatures. That's over 10%. Gives you some idea of the percentage of it. And it's all about really the environmental impact. It's not about Costco, not about the big box. It's about the environmental plan and the environmental impact that's going to be caused by that operation, those operations there. Tremendous amount of CO2, 10,000 car visits a day. I did want to recognize Martin Luther King holiday on Monday, celebrating a great icon. He was all about advancing civil rights. Environmental rights, civil rights, they're the same. We're all nexus together. And I just don't feel like the city is giving enough attention to our environmental rights, especially at that project. I did want to report that unfortunately, 37 of the, actually all the trees on the Costco property have been cut. They're cut. That's what was told back when I asked that question back in August. Oh, 37 trees, it was like a killing field. No doubt, I don't know. I've been in slaughter plant. There was a team that went out there and cut those trees and they took them apart and they put them through the chopper. Very efficient, but it was a killing field. So I had somebody call me, sent me an email from the petition saying that she cried when she saw that happen. But what I'm here tonight to really talk about is about the need for a Littleton tree trust. A Littleton tree trust. And can be there to help the city and be involved in tree planting and tree protection. I was part of the National Tree Trust, so I know something about tree trusts. They can be very effective, qualified, you can work very closely with the city and private sector. So that's what I want to ask you to do today. The city, not the city, the developer and Costco gave the city $70,000 for about 139 trees removed. Well, in lieu of. There were actually 280 trees that were taken out, but they only gave for 139. There's 70,000. There's a startup pot right there. And I see the environmental stewardship board playing a key role. This would be something you could take forward and use and implement.
It's time.
Thank you all very much. Absolutely. I'll be back.
Hi, my name's Ned Stern. I spoke to you all last month. I live at 1981 West Briarwood. I'm here to ask you your help in preventing the ongoing hardening of Littleton's soft trails. At your December meeting, I commented on South Suburban's proposed plan to concrete the Lee Gulch Trail between South Prince Street and the Mary Carter Greenway. Since then, South Suburban's survey showed neighbors want a soft crusher fines trail instead of a concrete sidewalk by a margin of 2.3 to 1. Despite this overwhelming support for crusher fines, South Suburban has decided to leave the 190 feet of concrete poured on October 7th. Once again, South Suburban has not listened to the community, and I welcome your support in reversing their decision. Please add this item on the agenda for your next board meeting. The other pressing issue involves the rail spur or mineral crusher fines trail. This soft trail is slated to be paved in March and replaced by parallel 8-foot wide concrete biking and pedestrian sidewalks. The city of Littleton is spearheading this project with assistance from South Suburban. The project should be changed to create a dual surface trail like what we have along the Mary Carter Greenway. The city opposes this plan because they are concerned crusher fines will wash onto the concrete biking lane. Sloping the parallel paths away from each other would solve this problem, and any stray crusher fines could be cleaned off with existing equipment owned by South Suburban. Once again, the destruction of the rail spur mineral trail is scheduled to happen in March, and your board needs to engage now to prevent the destruction of another of our soft trails by adding this item to the next meeting agenda. I welcome you to contact me. My phone number is 303-829-2789, or you can reach me at nedstern@aol.com or ask me later. Thank you. And I need to leave.
I was late, so thank you guys for speaking. I'm Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. I agree with Ned about soft trails. I think most people do prefer them. There's no question that some bicyclists would like firm paths. I think there are options for bicyclists, and our city should take care of that. TMB meets tomorrow night. You can come and tell them to create some bike paths on paved places that are already paved. Anyway, I did want to talk about South Suburban Parks and Rec. I'd like you to ask them to stop using poisons. Neonicotinoids are a poison. I think that we don't understand their lifetime effects. I think that they're killing insects around the world, and let's get rid of them. We should use them very sparingly, if at all. We need to add natives, and I know natives are going to change over the next 30 years because of heating. But we need to have more native plants because those are going to support habitat. And again, I'm going to say, I want to see a habitat expert, not just a tree expert, but a habitat expert between SSPR and the city. There should be one because habitat is the measure of our success in plantings. If it supports life other than human life. And so I want to see that measure. I want to see that metric that we want life in what we plant and maintain. So maybe along those lines, a ULUC update is being discussed. I have said before, and will continue to say, it's a terrible plan. It was not understood as a system when it was written. It needs improvement. So one of those improvements is to restore setbacks and restore landscape buffers around properties. The Lumen property is one of them. We had something called planned development overlays. They were carefully negotiated to serve both the occupant of the space and the city. And the ULUC ignored those. And that was wrong. It was a disservice to all of us. So we need to look back at the planned development overlays and get that back in. These have landscape buffers, so the city needs to look at restoring that. Landscape buffers, I lived in Altadena. Altadena is burned down now. One of the features of Altadena, it had good bones, just like Littleton. One of the features of Altadena was landscape buffers between properties, so that everybody had a sense of their own little private space and it reduced conflict. The purpose of zoning, one of the major purposes is to reduce conflict. And so restoring these kind of landscape buffers and having enough space around properties to, separate, give you a sense of privacy is important in zoning. We need to get that back. We also need more communal open space. So in these densifying areas, the city needs to identify where we're gonna have community gardens and communal open space. And there's not enough of that in these proposed areas of densification. Thanks very much.
All right, so 2 discussion topics tonight. First is the ongoing conversation about recommendations for negotiations, South Suburban. Working with you guys for a bit here. Talk about some research she has been doing and that she presented to you all.
Oh, great, thanks. What was that? So.
Swears.
My computer was Zoom, it really likes Teams and only Teams, apparently. I'll just stop those for a second. It's really weird. I guess I should talk to IT at some point.
Print it to a PDF and then just show the PDF, if you want to edit it.
Well, we might wanna edit it, that's what I want to bring.
Send it to me, I'll see if I.
Yes.
Happy New Year, friends.
Happy New Year.
Find a way to stay warm and upright.
Kids are still alive, so.
That's good.
Only there, but I was a little nervous the other night.
No, they're fine.
What do you do for water?
Yeah, you want her.
I get one of those. It's
Oh, are you out there like
we're
everybody?
like changing it out, knocking the ice out, flipping a new one out there like twice a day.
I had to do that when I had ducks. 'Cause they need shorts and stuff.
Good job thinking of the little creatures.
I had to. Kids would be pretty mad if they died. So.
Are they still laying? Even though it's cold?
A little bit, not as frequently.
This much daylight. Eat.
Oh,
Like
really?
1 egg a day out of our 3 hens.
You guys fight over who gets to eat it?
Throw it in there.
Save 'em up.
Can't find eggs at the store right now.
Exactly.
Start selling them on the sidewalk.
The meeting.
Oh, the ones that they, none of them got away.
People, eggs. Yeah. We had to buy top of them.
Meeting. Okay. Just me
Good luck.
Recording in progress.
So your children name. Orangey.
We got Pecky, Orangey. Who else do we have?
Your kids name them.
Penguin.
Penguin.
Penguin. And I'm blanking on the other one's name right now.
Scott, did your children name?
Because
yours?
we've lost a few along the way,
Oh,
and
sure.
had roosters that had to get returned too.
Pink one's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, it's good.
We've got a churro and we're lucky. Churro.
I have an older computer.
So I just took the outline that we made last week, which is all the black ink, and I added sort of examples that I found after reading a lot of different operating agreements from Parks and Rec districts. And then I bolded in blue just like questions I had for clarification for us to talk about. So I don't know if we want to go through it and
Let's do it.
so I mean, I added that under the measurable goals, what some of the other action plans that I have seen are, some, you know, put out all of the different state laws and say how they're going to comply with them. And I mean, it's just good to know that they're aware of what those are. And so that's just an example of one of them. And then the other big part of it is making sure that there's actually a focus on the specific region that we're in, rather than just throwing out different types of terms, like understanding, you know, what are the native plants, what are the best practices, what do we need to do in a water dry region. And so I just provided examples. That top one is from California. And it's the only out-of-state example because every state has different laws and regulations for their special districts. So I liked that example, but all of the rest are really from Colorado because it's easier to understand what we're allowed to do or what special districts are allowed, not allowed to do, by looking at Colorado in general.
Do you want me to open the link?
You don't have to, they all have the link too. I mean, it's a long plan. I just tried to summarize it at a high level. It's like, I wanna say, it'd be a little overwhelming. And then if you could scroll down a little bit, I think I had a question for the board, earmarking. I don't know. So, I mean, we just sort of put some, you know, earmark a certain amount of money, so figuring out exactly, you know, what that may look like, could be a discussion that we have. We're having the study session on March 25th with South Suburban, and we could do a one-pager like this, clean it up or make it look graphically pretty, or a presentation, but probably coordinate what exactly y'all want to do.
Yeah, I don't think South Suburban will be at the March 25th meeting.
Right, it would just be to council. But it's if you wanted to recommend to council, right, all of these different recommendations and what that looks like. So I don't know if y'all, we should probably come up with a plan. Can't have like a shared document for open meeting. So figuring out if it's something like this, if someone wants to spearhead the effort or do the presentation on the board, what that looks like. So I just kind of got the ball rolling to figure out what that content looks like after speaking some with Scott too, and taking what Hannah sent me from the high level last time.
Do you mind just scrolling through the document real quick and we can just remind ourselves what all we talked about at the last meeting?
What's that?
Do you
You mind just scrolling down? I just want to,
Yeah.
we can remind ourselves some of the highlights.
Oh, there are also board elections that, for South Suburban. I feel like on May 6th, an Amy Conklin gave her email and said if you have any interest in running, you should contact her. Friends of South Suburban. They're also seeking feedback on Hudson Gardens, and I'm happy to send that link to everyone here in general. Those are just general announcements regarding South Suburban too.
I think the goal of tonight's discussion can be to continue sort of populating this set of goals. And then if we get where we want to go with that, we can start finalizing to represent our recommendations to council at the March study session. I think we made a lot of good progress last time, and I think we hit a lot of what I consider the highlights, at least the stuff I've thought of. We're Laura's been able to add, as you see, stuff from her, research, but I think you just keep going through the document and let's just, yeah. keep adding.
Laura, when you said earmark a certain amount of money, can you just remind me what that was for?
That was something that we had brought up at the last meeting and there wasn't.
Like, is it for sustainability efforts? Is it to come up with a sustainability plan? Like what was?
I have a few, since it was underneath the formal action plan, I assume it's to make sure there's actually money earmarked to implement said plan. That would be my guess, but
Oh, and Mike had talked about, well, it was a brainstorm, as part of the negotiations, want to bring some money to the table to incentivize South Suburban to do the things that we're asking them to do, rather than being sort of an unfunded, so to speak. So, yeah, there's certainly more conversation to have there. Do we want to pick a certain one for what? But, that's that. Sure.
we can. I think someone requested that I pull out all of the action plan recommendations that relate to South Suburban, so I did that as well. It just like lists every single recommendation from y'all's plan, if that's helpful too, to take a look. And some of the agreements I saw had established maintenance standards in their agreements, like there's some really detailed ones out there. And then there's some really bad ones, so this isn't the worst, but it's definitely not the best.
Sorry, what is this, Laura?
For operating agreements, these are just the recommendations that I pulled that could possibly relate to South Suburban or in general Parks and Rec.
I think this document would be good to include almost as like a standalone, like appendix of sorts to a one pager of recommendations, because I think this is valuable for them to see the overlap, like for the council, the overlap.
Would we change the emerald ash borer to not treat, but just replace? Just to avoid putting any more pesticides in our environment,
So,
just replace.
so she's quoting straight out of the action plan.
Right.
So do you want, I mean,
We should modify it.
you want to edit the action plan itself and change, you certainly could.
How hard is that?
So council technically has adopted your action plan.
Okay.
So as you're going back to council now, if you wanted to make, I would suggest that's like, I guess, a separate effort. You might have other things you want to make changes. so-
Right.
As opposed to just one, but
But like, I mean, if we're gonna present this to South Suburban,
so,
eventually, or to city council,
Yeah,
or to
yeah.
South Suburban, it would be better.
I like what you're thinking.
I think it's perfectly valid for us to, keeping in mind negotiation theory, which, if you've ever read a book called Getting to Yes, says negotiate from interests, not positions, right? We can be a bit vague, and we don't necessarily need to be super prescriptive and say, do this, do that, right? Because we're not gonna be in the negotiation. We don't want to limit the flexibility that the negotiators have in their conversation with South Suburban. Honestly, we're going to do more work, but we hit some pretty important highlights that if we achieve those in the negotiation, I'm absolutely going to call it a win. Your formal sustainability structure into the South Suburban organization, like that would be amazing. So, I don't know, just we're talking about, these very specific things. Do we want to sort of make this type of a list for the negotiators, or do we want to do more high level?
I think it's just a good reference for the study session. I didn't think to be included as part of the like formal recommendations, but
I think if it's just for reference, you could, like, if you're not changing what's actually on the website, you could probably just you want it just to say replace, like that. I feel like council told y'all that sky's the limit, right? And that this isn't, we can technically change and take out or add any of this, and that could just be like specific sustainability identifications. This is just a starting point of what was identified in the action plan. And then if we want to change the actual action plan, that might be just like a separate thing, but I don't see why not in terms of editing this.
Yeah,
If you wanted to.
it's kind of reminiscent of the way that we crafted the action plan. Are there any other categories that we think we ought to be including on that list of recommendations for council, right? If you could toggle back, Grant, to the other document.
Do we have anything that addresses the hardscape versus softscape that we've been hearing a lot about? Because if not, we should probably put that in there too.
Yeah, so this is sort of correlates to the categories we have within the action plan. I don't know if before we drill down, if there's anything else that you want to add, number 7 or 8.
The other part that I feel like is important to highlight is I went and I copied what else we might, what their sustainability page is now, what else we want to see. I don't think it's been updated in like a year or so, but it has been updated. And I went to their board documents and found all of their board goals. So we scroll down a little, Brent, it like goes on to the next page, and they have stated these 2 very specific goals related to sustainability, and they each have actions tied to it. And from that link that I added there, they are supposed to be, this is all written in public. And so, I mean, I didn't love what the actions were tied to. It wasn't very tangible or strong. So, I mean, these are things they've already identified that we could add more meat to. We could say that these are part of your stated goals as a board, right? That this is, I did a little bit more digging, like it's interesting. So in terms of a negotiation, that could be more leverage.
Along those same lines, their comprehensive plan, we talked about, lists as one of their 4 core values, sustainability. In other words, they've gone out to their stakeholders and to their community, asked what are your values that you want to instantiate in our work as your rec district, and that's what a comprehensive plan is, and they listed sustainability. The difficulty has been, putting the rubber to the road.
Yeah, I think because I found these as like their board stated goals of like ecologically sound management practices, we could say, well, as a city, we think that those are these specific things. I think
that's what we need to do, because I feel like if we just say, you do, they don't know what they're doing. They haven't done anything. So if we don't give them hard as in concrete, sorry. But if we don't give them some like this, I'm concerned that they won't do anything. Do you know what I mean? They're just like, yeah, we'll get better, but that needs to be part of the measurables that's in there. Like, this is what we want to see. Remove concrete, no more concrete. Stop treating, no pesticides, less mowing, that kind of, just some real, because I just worry it's too nebulous if we don't give them a list.
When I think about creating a list, I think about the entire year that we spent creating our action plan, and I don't think it's our job to find all of those specific things that they need.
But it's a place for them to start. Like, if we don't, I just feel like they're not gonna do the things that are priorities for us if we don't give them, here's some things that we think you might start with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they've not done anything. So how do they?
But a lot of the things on this list that we've identified would give them a starting place. Like if we just say, do this, these 5 things, like specific things, I think that will get kind of lost in the weeds as opposed to kind of stepping out and needing to focus on a little bit of a bigger picture in the beginning that actually develops a comprehensive plan. That might hopefully include some of those specific things, but without kind of an overarching plan, I feel like some of that stuff would kind of get lost.
So are y'all thinking as a whole that you'd want to have choose who presents and do a PowerPoint? Do you want to do a 1 or 2 pager? Like, what do you want the study session to look like? Because we have this meeting and then February and March before. So just thinking about what that concrete deliverable might be to council before the study session, and what, the bones of that look like. Or your recommendations.
I definitely think a 1 to 2 pager at a minimum. And then if we want to then we can talk about that too, but I think coming up kind of with something we can hand them and say, here's our recommendations is what I.
And let's roll it back up. He's mad.
You want them all the way back up?
Just maybe, yeah, so we can see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are, I think these are solid recommendations in a lot of ways.
And having a sustainability body that doesn't really exist absent an occasional employee meeting, voluntary meeting, but an actual governing board, sort of similar to this organization within South Suburban, I think makes a awful lot of sense.
So are you saying you'd like it to be a citizen advisory board?
No, not a citizen advisory board, but a board at least within South Suburban that is tasked specifically with managing their sustainability efforts.
Does South Suburban have other boards or committees or something within their organization that focus on other things? Do we know?
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, I used to be on their public art committee, so
Okay.
they just have that.
Okay, so there is some, I just didn't know how similar it was to like how the city structures their boards and committees and
I should
commissions.
have a couple, but
Okay.
not as extensive as the city.
But, and that was a volunteer
Yeah,
committee.
yeah, just regular residents.
Cause that, you know, how we have it listed here is like a governance structure management body, not, you know, volunteer board.
I think, you know, like Littleton, but potentially even more so, South Suburban has a lot of expertise among its staff members. A lot of topics that pertain to stewardship and sustainability. I would like those people to sort of and start advocating for whatever the, because they're so differently situated in the city. So I think they need to develop their own sets of goals and will execute for themselves. And so I guess to that extent, I mean, I'm sure, go do specific stuff. I just want them to generate the specific stuff so that operationally it works.
The one thing about being staff is that generally speaking, there's no obligation then to have any kind of transparency, right? So we have staff meetings every day, all day throughout our city that most residents will never be aware of. But the way that our state's laws on open meetings are when an elected body appoints a advisory board, it then triggers open meeting laws and transparency that wouldn't be available if it's just staff. So if you wanted, I mean, when they came and talked to you guys, they talked about electrification of their small engine stuff, right? You know, that's really cool. And if you wanted to see that, be 100% electrified by a certain date, or double the amount that's electrified by a certain date, or whatever, you could certainly state those specific things, right? But if you're like, well, hey, I want it to be ongoing and continual, not just what we recommend them. I think having some form of transparency, like an advisory board, might better fill your desire.
I think we just don't speak South Suburban and we shouldn't have to, right? We don't know, how much staff can they devote to a thing? What kind of budget can they commit to a thing? What kind of timelines do they need to be on? How does a specific recommendation we make fit into their existing work plans? So I think it needs to be organic from within South Suburban, otherwise it's not gonna be successful. Maybe what we're talking about here though is some type of reporting out mechanism for whatever the structure ends up being, whether it's a group of staff members or whether it's some type of citizen or volunteer advisory board. And what would that look like? Do they put it in the newsletter? Do they go and talk to the board?
So when they were here, they talked about having a sustainability committee made up of employees. And so I'm afraid that when they get your recommendation, they're gonna say, check, done. We have this.
So I mean, everyone knows that part of my concern is that if there's no good faith, none of this matters anyway, right? If they're gonna check that box, because we said we want some type of sustainability governance structure or management development in South Suburban, they said, yeah, we did that check. It's like, oh, come on, no, you haven't. And you haven't, right? And they do. It's been defunct for some time now, and it was never all that active. If that's gonna be the sort of tone of the negotiations, we've got to be talking about different strategies other than trying to. interfere with that.
Well, but take it a step further. Let's say they agree to this in the negotiations, put it into our agreement. How do we hold them accountable for it, right?
Oh, yeah, and that's,
How do we say, hey, did you do this? Or are you doing this? Where can I see this? And it wouldn't trigger an open meeting law if it's just staff, so there would be
Right.
no open meeting. So, and then, Laura mentioned that she visited their sustainability page and hasn't been updated in a year. So is there a certain amount of frequency that you'd like to see, or put the date on when you updated it, so we can see, I mean,
Yeah, the dates and they're all like 2022 and some
Yeah.
2023.
so as you're making recommendations for transparency, I think getting a little bit into the details for what that means might, because when we do interaction with residents, they say, well, we just want something nice. What does that mean? Well, we just want you to do something nice. Okay, and then if I try to do something nice, and they go, that wasn't what I was thinking of. So the more specific we are about what will meet your expectations, so I think you're on the right track, but I think that you should try to dial it in a bit so that so it'll be obvious if and when that is met.
I mean, I agree with all that. I guess just to sort of be contrarian for a second, honestly, this is me thinking out loud for myself. I don't know if I believe this. At some point, it's just the tail wagging the dog. It's like, you're the rec district, you go do it. Like, we're the stakeholder and the people paying in, right? Like, we need you doing this. And if we have to constantly, okay, now we need accountability, now we need enforceability, now we're bringing money to the table. And it's like, why don't we take our own rec district, after a certain point, it's like, come on.
So the organic nature would be nicer, Scott, if they would decide to do this on their own in ways that really satisfied the needs of the public. But like, one of the reasons this motivating an updated operating agreement is so that we do have accountability measures. So if we say we expect, a certain level of maintenance, twice a month, we can actually check and see if they're meeting that.
Firestone, the town of Firestone in Colorado has an example for what they set as maintenance standards in their operating agreement with their special district. I'll put it up there too.
So from your perspective, figuring out how to do that with sustainability issues that are important to you, I think would be most beneficial to our council to hear. So, whatever it is that you wanna recommend.
Or like if there are board elections and you want greater transparency in when those are happening, how they're happening, and who the people are that are running and what their stance is on sustainability. Legally in Colorado, if there's a ballot measure involved, that actually has to go through a mail ballot. And there are special districts that have been doing ballot measures in Colorado. And then they add in electing those board members so that every single person, but with what comes with that is they have to add in the information into like a blue book in a packet. So it depends if they want to pass one. So like, they're not actually tied right now by state law for these board of director elections, but that could be something that you recommend and you want to know what people's stances are on sustainability when they're running for the board, because that seems to be a big deciding factor in their decision making is their board.
I guess I'd just go back to, if they knew what to do and they had the ability to do it, it would have happened. They don't, I don't think. And I think we need to show them what to do. Like,
Let's start at the beginning here. So, I
be
mean,
specific.
one of the top line things that we're all in agreement about recommending to council is number 2, right? Some type of governance structure within South Suburban. So how do we want to flesh that out? Given what Mike is saying.
I think they need an environmental stewardship board.
Yeah, so how often?
Yeah.
Volunteer.
Every city that's part of South Suburban, only Littleton.
Well,
How
I
does
think the
that-
district
how's that
can't
work?
give us something that they don't give to their whole district.
Right.
Um,
So it has to be anyone from all of the
yeah,
cities.
I think in general, we share a lot of things with these communities, so having any kind of an advisory board would probably, at the very least, would give us something to look at and go, yep, that meets our needs, or it doesn't.
So yeah, from the community, volunteer, environmental stewardship board.
With some staff liaisons to provide that sort of that group perspective, and maybe the same way we have Mayor Pro Tem Bar, some board member involved as well, and meeting monthly and subject to open meetings laws.
Kind of looks like the public art committee might be the only one.
Oh, jeez.
I'm like trying to find any other ones and I could be looking at,
So like, you can,
That's wild.
like the public art committee. Since they already did that.
Your
I know what
point
to
that you
do.
just brought is actually kind of interesting. You could have it be made up of elected officials from the different municipalities, you know? So have one elected official from every be the member of this. So it could be, you know,
Maybe that was their full-time job.
It was, we have, the South Platte Working Group's still around is maybe an example of
Yeah.
how South Suburban can.
they only meet as needed and it hasn't met for a long time.
Yeah, we require more periodic meetings, but same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Set up with electeds and other kind of.
So that's another alternative to what you're discussing with the residents.
What do people think?
I think if it's gonna be a citizen advisory board, subject to open meetings law, you want some mechanism of authority, you know, or at least tie in with.
So require a board liaison to it. So, resident advisory board that's supported and attended by at least one member of the South Suburban Board.
I think- Part of my thinking is that, you know, if staff is taking the lead, they're in a pretty good position to put into practice what they're talking about. In the same way that kind of early in the conversation around sustainability in Littleton, a lot of it was coming organically out of the Public Works Department, right? If we get what we're asking for, which is a sort of citizen advisory board, the main difference that I don't want us to forget about is that our council asked for this board because politically that's what they want, right? The current South Suburban board might just say, great, thanks, like, next.
But didn't the Littleton board want it because the community wanted it?
Yeah.
So if the community wants it, they go to South Suburban board. We are the community.
To do.
To me, this seems like a nice step forward for what you guys want and that they would be able to agree to and support, I hope.
Laura, do you have a way to like type this stuff in while we're doing it?
I'm writing it all down.
Like describe.
I wanna take,
You can check.
take Brent's computer.
Brent's
but-
computer.
Yes, I can. The other thing is do you want them to do like a greenhouse gas inventory and a formalized climate action plan?
Let's get this part first. and
Do they have the ability to do
I don't know, Littleton did it
Everybody
before.
has
that? Do
the
they have a
ability.
you?
You can also hire a consultant.
Do they have the money to hire?
Let's bracket that for just a second, and we'll just move systematically through this thing.
But I don't wanna ask them for things that are crazy expensive or that, like a citizen advisory board's not expensive, right? It's a huge thing to do, but a greenhouse gas inventory, hiring somebody to do that might be a lot. I don't know.
I suppose, I mean,
Goals,
I'm always talking about the
Meet them,
political
yeah.
makeup of the thing, but it matters, right? If it's a citizen advisory board, their board is going to appoint the membership. You get no control over what that.
That's what I just heard from y'all, but if those don't look right under two. I don't know.
Yeah, with, also, a staff board, yeah. What do you think?
I wouldn't worry so much about whether something is affordable or not. I mean, if our council really likes the idea, and then they might find ways to partner to make it happen, you know.
So it doesn't hurt to ask, is what you're
This
saying?
is our wish list, right?
Ask for what you want,
I
yeah.
just don't wanna upset them with the wish list. That's insane.
I think you could upset that, you're okay.
There are,
Okay.
that's too late. It's gone.
If it's not possible, they won't work on it, but maybe they will the next year.
Or they'll say no.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, so unless they do a greenhouse gas inventory, how do they know how much carbon they're producing, right? And how do we set a goal and measures for them to meet, right? That's what I kind of think.
Baselines, yeah.
So maybe that's part of like this whole thing where you also last time like needs measurables. It's hard to know where you're starting if you don't have a baseline. I don't know if y'all want to recommend an inventory or.
I think that could also potentially fall under the line item number one, like the formal sustainability action plan.
Yeah.
And say like one of the action items in that should be a baseline greenhouse gas assessment.
We made that number two, sort of expecting that their volunteer board is gonna create it like we did. In other words, number one would be a formal sustainability governance structure, or whatever, the volunteer citizen
Oh, I see.
advisory board. And number two is to have them do a formal sustainability action plan.
Just switch them.
I think that's great. They're dialed in. It certainly is helping City of Littleton.
Sorry, switching back and forth between Mac and PC is
Well,
fortunately, yeah.
we want to talk it for number two about more Littleton involvement, because what we had put in the action plan was that we, this board would serve as an accountability body for South Suburban's sustainability work. There's no sort of explicitly Littleton representation in that room, or for that matter, Sheridan or Lone Tree or else. I don't know if that matters, but.
Maybe there just needs to be at least one volunteer from each city or something like that, a way to incorporate.
That's a good idea.
Would it be by city? What's the best way to make sure it's representative
Probably.
on city?
All to be little.
How many cities do they serve?
Lone Tree, Sheridan. No, not Englewood.
Centennial?
Centennial.
Centennial. Us.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Inglewood has their own parks department, but they do have one park that's Marshall Park.
Kind of.
Well, it is in Inglewood and it is the district, so.
Not
Okay. So we're good with number one, that seems pretty. Might be all
Yeah,
done.
they don't.
Right.
Yeah. There's the stand, yeah.
She could.
Good.
So.
So number two, the formal sustainability action plan created by the volunteer citizen advisory.
Does it make sense to get staff involved on that too, though? Like not just the volunteer board who might have some more experience?
Maybe it's drafted by or created by them, but yeah, just like with you guys, then staff had a chance to give council our perspectives. Council ultimately kept it the way this body sent it to them, but also, understands from a pacing perspective, they're gonna rely on staff to pace.
The collaborative effort between.
Put in tandem, do you want it to say collaboration? I don't know. Words.
There are these first two items, things that should have a timeline or like within a year, some sort of time boundary, otherwise you could spend 5 years on them.
So negotiations I know start in, the next few months, but is there an anticipated plan,
So from a historical perspective, I don't know how often or how well the city talked with South Suburban. During the time that I've been here, it's gotten more and more and better and better. And so like right now, I don't expect to be in a stretched out negotiation process with them. I expect to be able to say, hey, here's the operating agreement you have with Lone Tree. Our operating agreement isn't even worth using as a benchmark. And here's the things we want included in our operating agreement that are different from what you have with Lone Tree. And hopefully we can come real quickly to where we get. I don't expect it to be a multi-monthly process.
maybe we just say something along the lines of within 6 months of new operating agreement taking effect, or within 12 months of new operating agreement taking effect, something to that effect.
Yeah, conditional like that.
For 6.
6.
Six at the most.
Yeah, I like because with time limited, it does give you the chance to measure. But once something's in the operating agreement, we can ask for status updates regularly, and we do meet with them at least monthly, sometimes multiple times in a month.
If you go up to number one,
Within 6 months.
I would just add D. It's, action completed within, or, board or whatever, created within 6 months of new operating agreement taking effect.
One really nice thing about everything you put in here is this is all stuff that we've done. So we're not saying do as I say, not as I do. We're saying do as
You've
we
done
did.
it. You can do it too.
You do it too. I love that.
Is 6 months reasonable in terms of advertising a committee, organizing it with staff, doing interviews.
They have urgency to it.
Well, I
That's
mean,
what you're
they just
saying.
advertised for us in January. And new people are appointed in April, so yes. 4 months, actually, is what.
And then you're also having to like make sure you've dedicated staff time. Like I just wanna make sure that
But they did all that.
Is a,
I think they did all that in 4 months.
Well, by that time, we had, the council had passed.
Started.
But here's the thing, is if it took 7 or 8 months, you give us 6 months, gives us a target.
yeah.
Go after this, and if it took 8 months, we're still clapping.
One sustainability action plan. You just call it a district-wide, well, I guess that's implied. What do we want them to measure?
You don't have to include any of this, this is just what I found.
Well, I think that greenhouse gas inventory.
We just say to include at a minimum. And we just list things, a greenhouse gas inventory.
Should we ask them to measure their use of, you know, pesticides, neonics, that sort of thing? So gauge any reductions.
Use of diesel, gas,
Yeah.
miles driven.
That's all in an inventory, but that would be separate. Having like tree diversity, that's not in an inventory, it's separate.
Herbicides as well. Smells like 2,4-D.
They catalog their canopy, their tree diversity, so that they can combat something like emerald ash borer.
Yeah.
They don't. So she's saying she supports that.
Yes.
aspect.
Type it. That's what I'm saying. Put it in there, Laura.
And to include at a minimum this.
Yeah, what our city forester presented to you guys, it basically was saying that it was really inadequate understanding of their trees and support in general for their trees.
With dramatic understaffing, there are.
Yes, understaffing is right. That's right.
I know sometimes water usage is something that's like included in greenhouse gas inventory, but I still think that would be important to pull out separately, like water use, water use and management.
Like per property, I'm not sure how granular is helpful for our goals, but
What did you say?
For park.
like per property, water usage per park or fields or
Whatever that word.
however
may
they
be.
break down their properties.
Yeah, cause if the fact that they save so many thousands of gallons on the Lone Tree Golf Course doesn't really impact us.
Yeah, like how does that break down? Yeah.
And it's like park classification levels or is around what they use or levels of service. Maybe that's the.
Different sizes, like acreage and usage, like a soccer field versus like a playground, but.
Certainly different meters, so seems like they can be reported out.
Oh, yeah, true, yeah.
Yeah, I would think that that data is already there. It's just a matter of compiling.
There's also a law that is prohibiting like landscaping practices for water conservation for non-functional turf, and it does apply to special districts. However, the caveat is that if it's used for recreation,
Like a soccer field or something.
it does not count. So it's specific.
I think you guys are okay with.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
part of recreation is like,
Right.
But watering the stuff that nobody uses.
Or just like sometimes there's leaks and tons of like, I
Yeah.
walk by South Suburban Park every summer that has leaks everywhere, you know, so like that stuff would get caught even though that field would have been irrigated anyway.
We're not quite there yet. I think it would go under accountability and enforcement, but it's all I have in this thought. I think they need to do some type of commitment to public outreach before they do quite a few things that they do.
Education or outreach?
No, it's kind of like, surprise, we paid. for things.
Asking for
Yeah.
permission from the community that it impacts.
I will say that sometimes the motivations aren't as clear and so like the public comment you heard today, he was referring to the paved surface as the biker surface. But for someone who's using a walker or a wheelchair, it also is an accessible surface for them. And there's some ADA laws that trigger a hardened surface, you know, when you do certain improvements, those kind of things. So it's not always as clear as one position, you know.
But at least make an effort to ask.
Completely, completely.
Which
There's no
is a
excuse-
whole new
there's
thing
no-
for them, I
No
feel
excuse not to be responsive and engage the public.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what else do we want them to include in an action plan.
Would the greenhouse gas inventory also cover like how much they're mowing, how much they're driving? That?
If it's a combustion, so if it's like a lawnmower that uses gas, then theoretically, yes, that would be.
Okay,
Although they are on track to convert
okay.
all of their stuff to electric because they have to.
Yeah.
Very much illegal.
I don't know how they're gonna do that, at least right now, though, with some of the things they said about like ride-on electric mowers when they have huge space.
It's everything 10 horsepower or less is what the state law.
Horsepower.
Okay, so a big mower would.
Yeah, but the big riding lawnmower should be in their inventory.
We need to say like industry standard, get the greenhouse gas inventory.
That's what it's called.
Yes, there's my inventory.
Okay, and does not converting things to concrete fit in any of those? Would it be covered by any of those categories?
No.
Since our community keeps coming to us about this, perhaps we should put them in there somewhere.
I do think that, you know, the representative sample size of people who come to you, you know.
Yeah, but they're really persistent.
And they're very nice. Yes.
So
I think it might be a little too granular.
I think the bigger part of it is like coming back to the community and making people aware of the changes and making people feel like they can have an input if they strongly.
Or if there's a why, right? If it was triggered by ADA, are they not communicating that?
Tell the
Yeah.
people who are paying for
And,
the
and
service what's
just
happening.
from a sustainable point of view, I don't wanna see them removing concrete, you know, so the reasons they added it include things like accessibility, ADA, those kind of things. Even though they're not gonna continue to add it, removing concrete has an environmental cost, so I would rather them, okay, engage the public, those kind of things, but don't.
Yeah.
Especially because they could end up doing it 2 years from now because they get an ADA complaint and they have to do it. You're like,
So would that be under this sort of this category if you want them to engage, like have type of community engagement? Like what is that?
So I didn't know
Yeah.
how you mean to take us number 2 or whatever.
It could also be, I think, an action plan item potentially.
the reason why they had that survey that you referred to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so that's one of the examples of Littleton's engagement, changing it with them. And so,
because we shouldn't have to.
but
what are you
but it's
doing?
good that they're listening and we're going, so that it becomes a standard for our community and hopefully the district.
Which is wonderful, although they need a little lesson in how to
Seek public input.
introduce a survey that's truly
Not leading.
not biased, and leading you in one direction. That's not how that works. But no, I'm very thankful that they.
I don't know if it necessarily fits under number 2, but somewhere in here, just like seek public input before making substantive changes to assets or something like that.
That might just need to be its own number. Cause I'm like, maybe it fits under the action plan, maybe it fits under transparency, but I feel like it's also relevant and important enough that maybe it is just its own. I know.
I feel like that should probably be more specific, but that's what I heard.
So the last time they did their master plan, I believe was 22. So typically every 5 years, so probably in 27, they'll be going out for it again. You may want to include, add a industry best, section or emphasis within your next master plan update for sustainability.
Or do we need to specify before making changes to,
Probably.
That's,
Jeff said to assets.
Okay, I
the
couldn't
reason
hear
why I
that.
thought of that was because of that, because that master plan will be the massive community engagement process,
Okay.
or at least should be.
How much time should community?
Well, so there's best practices around public engagement around big changes. Planners do this all the time, you know? So maybe we could mention something about like adopt some best practices or like seek out, we could suggest a few, but I think we should suggest, if we suggest anything, an established set of best practices from the American Planning Association or whoever. I don't think we need to come up with those for them.
Yeah.
It's in gardens right now.
Anything else on 2?
I think where they miss it is when it's not a planner involved, when it's just an operational thing.
Sure.
Right.
And that's,
I think that its own thing.
That clearly was a yeah.
So for this earmark a certain amount of money, we're saying the city is earmarking that, is that?
I'm not, does that fall under the action plan?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that needs to be separate.
Make it free.
You want another one, or does it go under?
Well, it's specifically to the city council as opposed to, so you're saying, consider if city funding is needed to accelerate or make these steps feasible.
So should that almost be like the last point, where it's like, if any of the above need specific resources,
Or you
consider
can
earmark?
preamble to it, but like
Yeah,
separately,
yeah.
one way or the other, where you're asking our council to, you know, put the money along with the
Yeah.
words. If needed,
Yeah.
so. Like, if you're saying, you know, accelerate your tree canopy growth, our council could say, hey, we'll match you dollar for dollar, tree for tree.
Are we asking council to do that for the entire district?
No, well, yes, but any money we have would be spent in our city.
Like probably just in Littleton Parks, I would.
In our city, yeah.
Yeah, add that caveat.
We're not gonna pay for loan
Centennial.
trees.
He's like, sweet.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any trouble, but making it explicit makes sense, yeah. It's not legal for our funds to go to pay for somebody else's stuff.
Sounds like
Yeah. That is
So,
another one.
number 3. Good.
Do we wanna add any
Your
more?
structural changes? Or any changes?
I think major change, because if it's like a park, it's not, we're gonna.
The structural could be-
Grass and, you know, do something else that's structural change, it's just a change.
This is just our list to share at the study session, right? And then the city
Hopefully they'll just-
attorney's also gonna look at this before we get to negotiation?
No, you're the lawyers now.
I mean, there's a couple, there's some.
Yeah, so when this board recommended the action plan, we did not vet it through attorney's office or staff. So,
For this agreement though with South Suburban?
oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's all, I was just confirming.
The city attorney will be writing this.
Just that this
You're just,
I don't think we're
this is
asking
just
for
going
anything
to the
illegal.
study session.
So
No,
far.
I was just trying to figure out like how we should be thinking about the audience right now. If it's like just the council for.
it's just.
Yeah, your audience is the council, exactly.
Mhm.
So 3.
We wanna specify what best practices or no? Is there, like you
Or what was the
mentioned,
I think, I
organization?
mean, yeah, I mean, the American Planning Association, I'm sure these like national recreation associations have engagement best practices. Maybe we could like,
NPRA, theirs is that they're.
yeah, I think the rec organization would be the most appropriate one to follow, but, yeah, just have them align with that. Seems great. Yeah.
So, sorry, going back to the changes to assets, do you want it to be operations and services as well as assets? It's like if they're going to, you know, like they might, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, right?
Like changing the type of surface on a trail might not rise to the level of assets, cause it's still a trail, still trail. So, it might, you know, but it certainly would be operations, services.
Changing like the Zumba schedule at the rec center, gonna trigger public input or is that not gonna
Versus
be?
changing a trail, yeah.
You know, I mean,
Say,
from a sustainability point, you don't care about the Zumba, but yeah, maybe, right? Maybe it should include.
just say,
I don't
seek,
know, I just thought-
seek public input before making changes to assets, operations, or services that pertain to stewardship or sustainability. I mean, we don't care if they change the Zumba class, yeah, it's like.
National parks, right?
should, maybe we also include like, there's, you know, the input before it happens, but then the communication when they make the decision to make the change. Like, I know that, what is it, 6 now kind of has transparency of data planning and board elections, but I feel like that's specific to more of the administrative, like board election side, so. It's almost like seek public input before making major changes to assets and also communicate decisions to,
Rationale behind decisions to the community at large.
yeah, to affected
Impacted.
members.
Is all that caught under best practices though?
No, not the
I
community.
feel like there's public input and then there's communicating after the fact, like those are kind of two different things.
Maybe it could be outreach best practices or something like. we
Yeah,
want
that
them to
would
do
I,
Outreach before, and then we want them to
Yeah,
communicate
yeah,
why
yeah.
after, yeah,
so,
like
or I'd
outreach.
make just like that, at the, like the main item, number 3, should kind of maybe be rephrased to, you said it really well.
Yeah, that A should be, adopt outreach best practices. And then, yes, public outreach, and then C is kind of what we were just saying, like, rationale, justification. Yeah, oh, it's already there, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But didn't we say?
I wouldn't even say if it goes against public input, I would just say
Yeah,
if it
just
happens.
It should be communicated, period.
If you're making a change, the people that are affected should.
Should know.
We should delete B because it sounds like we're, I mean, the way it's worded, it sounds like we're advocating for them to pave soft trails and, yeah. We put at number 3, Laura, please seek public input before making major changes to assets, operations, or services. That stewardship.
Assets.
Operations.
Operations and services. And do environmental stewardship work. Cool, good.
Yeah. Great.
4. It's trickier.
What are these enforcement mechanisms or accountability?
Is it like a report out type of
Is this
thing?
where you wanna say you want this and
Is
you
that
want
number
the
5?
attorney to come up with that, what that is? The city attorney?
You can get pretty close.
Do you recall from some of the other,
If, they don't comply. Yeah.
Annual sustainability report.
I think for a lot of, for the ones that were doing sustainability, it seemed as if there was maybe a stronger relationship, or like for some places, it was interesting for like Boulder, they own so much of their own and operate so much of their open space, they don't really care with the small amount that's in the special district because it's so little. This one had specifically maintenance standards, which might sort of get at enforcement mechanism, because if you don't have a set standard for how are you, treating or removing your dashboard, like how are you doing these things? How are you, are you mowing with diesel gas? Like just thinking about, that is really in the weeds. You could just suggest.
well, I was gonna say, one of the ones that you sent us, it says like, the town shall use its best efforts to advise and update the district of the town's planned uses each calendar year. One of the examples.
So I talked to Mayor Pro Tem Barr earlier today about all this, and he wanted me to convey his input, which is he wonders if there's some plug and play set of standards for maintenance for parks and districts. And there's gotta be.
I think it's also aligning like our levels of service classification with theirs and clarifying what comes with that. So if it's classified as this type of park, does that mean there are this many people maintaining it? Does that mean there are certain ways they should be irrigating? Should they be changing the landscaping to be xeriscaping? Like thinking about how to work within the system they already have established to reach some of the sustainability goals.
Is there any staff that's looking at maintenance specifically for this agreement?
Kelsey will be.
Okay. I'm just wondering how much effort we put in. Maintenance and sustainability are obviously related, but I'm wondering how much effort we put into something like maintenance standards.
Yeah, we're looking for something measurable, right? So it's like, how much has the tree canopy increased within the city? That kind of stuff, is that?
How much has non-functional turf decreased where
Yeah,
you
or
don't
something
need it?
like that.
Should number 2 include like set some goals. So the measurable goals, then do we wanna align what we want a report on to represent like measured reduction in use of pesticides and herbicides? Like, could we tie those two together, like 2 and 4? In some way, so it's a little bit less nebulous? Like if we, like cataloging tree diversity and the canopy, that's like set your baseline, but then what do we want them to do from there? I don't think we want that to be their only goal. So we want them to increase both of those things, but then,
So you think like tons of carbon reduced or CO2?
yeah.
Moving it up, so it's right after.
I think like an annual report would be great, but if they're just kind of like listing off like, yep, all our leaf blowers are electric now, like that doesn't, capture all those other things that we want specific.
I mean, should they redo a greenhouse gas inventory in 3 to 5 years? That's the industry standard, so that we could see how they have reduced and what measurable goals they are setting to reduce emissions.
Is it not more standard to do it annually?
That'd be my only job. I don't think you'd see enough also of the reduction.
Yeah.
Just do that annually. It'd be a little painful.
So are you thinking in the 1, 2, 3, 4, we need to put like greenhouse gas inventory every 3 years with the goal of a 50% reduction by this? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Something like that I think would be good. 'Cause
For
then-
all of those 4 things, if we can figure it out?
I don't know if we call out, we could also say, like, use science-based targets to determine reduction. Like, I don't know if we wanna say like 50%,
We
like,
don't need to prescribe their goal, but they need to figure one out, and tell us what it is, and then show us
Yeah.
that they're meeting it.
so it's almost like action plan should include measurable goals. And then like the next thing is like, and, targets with timelines or something.
Yeah, plan to reach those goals. An approach.
So maybe that just goes under the measurable goals. But
Yeah.
Yes, the
yeah.
existing
so
headings.
measurable,
Yeah.
for all of them.
Yeah.
You need to establish a baseline and then you need to give us goals and reductions on an annual basis or something like that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
I wouldn't even just say greenhouse gas emissions, because we also talk about pesticides, herbicides, like, it's really more so measurable action items to reduce
So moving
like, everything
5,
listed above or something.
so Laura, I think everything that you have for 5 becomes part of the I measurable goals. So that it,
Measurable goals. That's
and then put targets and timelines should be that kind of a thing, so that it applies to all 4 of the things below. Is that what we were thinking?
I think that's perfect. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's much more clear.
So then do you, like, how does this factor in, or does it not factor in, or?
Wanna, I don't wanna use the word threaten, but that's all that's coming to my mind. Kind of like give the sense that like, you need to meet these, or like something's going to happen. We're going to react in some way that may not be favorable for the district's operations. But I don't know what we are allowed.
It's hard because like right now, this is an issue across the globe, right? That we set things at a Paris Climate Agreement, that we set things as a nation and we're not meeting our targets. This is we wanna come up with it here, happen here, it's recorded, but I do think that this is just so like, this is like a wider issue that people have with these plans and these goals is like, okay, so how we'll do the inventory again, but nothing, like things aren't changing in this way or this manner, so this is a big question, it's not. It's fair that it's difficult.
Attorney question.
What are the items of leverage that we have? One, we pay them, what we get tax revenues from our residents. I don't know that we have any way to tinker with that. Or our participation in the district at all.
Ultimately, it's that, right? But I think that it's, everybody has a desire to be a good partner, do good. And so, once there is clear expectations that they agree to, if we were able to determine they're not meeting those, I think that that's enough for most people to say, I want to up my game and meet these. Or identify what hurdles or obstacles are keeping me from meeting them.
Maybe before we talk about enforcement, we talk about dispute resolution. There's some mechanism, on negotiation that we want. That's participating with us.
The trail example is a good one. We became aware of this with residents not knowing about it. We brought it up to them, they stopped the work, they conducted the survey, they changed course on what their plans were, So without having a spelled out dispute resolution, we were able to navigate it fairly effectively.
Conflict management or?
I think it has to have some type of teeth somewhere.
Mandatory arbitration.
Do they have a public comment of sorts, like at their board meetings? Like how can is that pretty much the same, like?
Are now filming their meetings, I saw.
Posting them on YouTube, so you can watch them if you're still a client.
I do think at a minimum, there needs to be some kind of, I would like to see more frequent, especially in the beginning, but like an annual report out on, and maybe this goes under the action plan item,
They
yeah.
have
I
a
skipped
monthly
down.
report that they issue right now that includes multiple sections, nothing on sustainability. Would you like to see?
What does it include? Some examples.
Pull it up, but,
And does it just go to stakeholders like the city, or does it go to, is it like I could sign up for that newsletter?
Sign up to their website and it goes to this.
Okay.
So they have a golf department, finance department, IT department,
Yeah.
recreation department, planning and development department, communications department. So each one of those gets an update. So there's not a sustainability department.
Yeah.
And not a sustainability
Or
update.
monthly?
These are monthly.
I do, so that would be really good. But I do think there should kind of be like a full status of the action plan report out of sorts.
They have to add a sustainability section and then they're like, we don't have anything to put in there. Well, then get something to put in. That's the whole point.
Right. Well, if they're meeting monthly, then there should be something to put in there from their
Right.
environmental stewardship board.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, they start reporting about the water and how it compares.
Is
year to
that
year.
sort of what you're thinking? It kind of ties back to this.
I think that I think they're kind of two separate things. I think that there's the monthly, you could call it like a newsletter that's not gonna, there's no way that newsletter is gonna include an entire update on the action plan. Maybe they might highlight a couple, like, here's a couple things we knocked out, but what I'm thinking of is also a state of the state, here's the action plan and here's like.
Quarterly?
Or twice a year.
And it's almost like right now, because it's more relevant, it makes sense what we're doing, right, which is like almost monthly, we're getting updates, but if they want to report out to the city, for instance, is that like maybe quarterly makes sense?
Some span of time or some sort of calculation would be helpful.
Yeah.
So like seeing change over time or the cumulative use of water or, so maybe quarterly is a good cadence. I mean, that's what you do with a lot of grant reporting. Maybe that's a good model to follow.
Yeah.
And are they reporting to council or are they reporting to us?
To the people?
Maybe reporting to the community. So this is.
A public report.
Okay. So both of these are public reports. The monthly one in that newsletter and then the quarterly one.
I think that's what you want.
Yeah, I think the monthly is just like a sustainability section in their newsletter that might highlight a couple of things they've done. And then there's like an actual report on the whole action plan quarterly.
Also reports on action plan progress.
Although unlike the other things that I was saying that we do and don't just say, we don't quarterly report.
Yeah, and that's why I was kind of like quarterly, biannually,
Maybe you
annually.
should, maybe that's something you're working on, but understand there's some amount of runway that's gonna.
Yeah.
Do we need to specify where that report is going and where it's going to be published or like what it looks like?
Like I would also be fine with, because for instance, our action plan is so big. And so I feel like if we wanted to publish here's the state of the city of Littleton's environmental stewardship action plan, like quarterly probably would be too much. Like, and here's the 2025 report or like.
Basically doing it monthly.
Yeah, but you're like updating us on sections. Like if someone wanted to see the status of every single item, to me, that makes sense to be like an annual, like at the end of 2024, So like, here's the status of every single action item, complete, in progress, not started.
Maybe the report is made to their environmental stewardship board, quarterly to their environmental.
Yeah,
stewardship.
yeah, kind of,
It's a
yeah,
public meeting, then we have transparency, we can watch, we can see if it,
yeah, that makes sense.
I think twice a year would be better than
Yeah, cause then you can give feedback too. You can say like,
because annually is hardly ever,
Yeah, I would,
yeah.
especially
So the district does the monthly report, the district does the.
it's
annual
killing
report.
me.
It's
So
a sales
frustrating.
pitch.
Just like you don't have to do the staff work, but you have to set the kind of dreams, so to speak, the aspirations.
Which is not a,
It's not clear.
Laura, are we okay changing annual to, what is it, biannually? It should be
Semi-annual?
twice a year.
Semi-annual.
well, I think if they're doing quarterly progress updates to the committee, I would think then like an annual report would be sufficient. I don't think that needs to be every 6 months.
But I thought the monthly was to the community at large, not necessarily to.
So, but I think we kind of tweaked it to where there's the monthly is kind of a separate thing. That's like newsletter.
Right.
The quarterly would be updates to that sustainability governance structure. So basically what Laura's doing to us.
Twice a year to the public.
So it's almost kind of like non-formal updates in a sense, I guess, because it's not like a published document. It's just Laura going through like, hey, here's the status of some of these action items. And that's where I think annually, like if they wanted to do an annual report of sorts. And maybe that's not even necessary if they are doing quarterly reports too. I don't know.
quick time check, it's 7:50. The second agenda item, but it was sort of an optional update on the action plan. So I think we keep them in.
That or if people wanna take pieces and work on this is like over the next few weeks and we come back in February, but I feel like we're finally getting somewhere.
I think it's so hard.
I think we're fine to keep working on it.
Okay, sounds good.
How many numbers are there? There's only 7, right?
This is just data that I found.
So we're.
Okay.
That's probably really.
And we still have next month also.
And then you also technically have March too.
True, yeah.
Not to.
Yeah, and our February meeting's only in like 2 weeks.
It is.
So
So we could do the other.
yeah, so we have 2 more.
That I could do then, if we wanna.
And one thing that would be helpful, if Laura sends this document out to you all, you can individually work on it and bring your stuff, your recommended changes or edits or additions to the next meeting. So,
It
well,
just can't be
we don't want you to
a-
share it throughout, but you can certainly look at it, work on it yourself and bring it.
So let's get back to 3 then. What type of enforcement mechanism or accountability do we want to see?
Is it even practical to have like a financial penalty, just the way they're paid via taxes? How would that even, I don't know how that would work.
Or we talk about earmarking funds, I mean, further down, but like, are theoretically, those earmarked funds could be tied to a certain performance, yeah.
I would, anything we do, like to reimbursement.
Yeah.
You have to, if you plant 100 trees, then we'll reimburse you for 50 of them.
Yeah.
If that was the scan.
Just tricky because what the process around anything to do with financial penalties, it's like, can we just be totally unilateral about it? At some point, all the enforcement comes down to, maybe we just say it like this. We expect and we hope that South Suburban partners with us in really good faith on these topics.
And that's the enforcement. Just say, we really hope you're gonna do the right thing.
And I expect.
The reports too, like,
Yeah.
it's deliverable.
Do we wanna table this one for a second or?
Honestly,
I don't know how we can do that.
just think all day about enforcement. I mean, it goes against the grain to say that, but I think what it all is gonna come down to. They're gonna follow this or they're not.
So I think the main concern is whether they agree to it up front. And once they agree to it, I believe they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
So if they don't find it agreeable, that's where it's kind of tough.
We could offer for me to have the attorney figure this out and just have it as an item without the details. I know you're also an attorney, so it's hard to.
I'm not the city attorney though, I'm just a totally different mindset, and I just don't want to plunk it down in his lap and want some enforcement.
Like our council meets with their board once a year. And if they're not living up to the agreement and we bring, that's an agenda item, I mean, It just would be very highly uncomfortable, and nobody wants that, you know? And that, I think that you're gonna be fine if we can get it. So.
Maybe you pick the city attorney's brain in the next 2 weeks before our next meeting and just get a kind of broad idea.
I mean, I talked to him about a month ago. He said I don't think he's been as focused on this as we've been.
Sure. I just mean like like in the realm of enforcement within a service agreement, like what would our,
Terminate the agreement, basically.
Is there
What- what-
lawyer
what
would
would
like-
you
Like
do?
generally in any agree, what would he recommend?
yeah, or,
I feel like Reed's gonna be a little uncomfortable with being unilateral about this, because there's all kinds of enforcement mechanisms you can talk about, and you can write into an agreement, but it has to be politically recommended to him by somebody, by us or council or somebody, and you can't just go rogue on this. It won't work for anybody if he just comes up with it. He can report back and we can pick, but we can't just leave it up to the school.
Should we go to 4 and come back?
yeah.
We could look and see if we can find any examples that we like of
The
ability.
made 100 hours of free ice time. Volunteer groups for
You have to be the goal, you should.
individual obligations, yeah.
Away EVs.
Or, right?
I think 4 is good.
Yeah.
That one's 2 now, or 3 now, 2.
Well, I think we had said that
It's
these are
different.
2 different things.
One is to the community at large on that thingy, but
Yeah, this was basically just saying add in a sustainability section to the monthly newsletter.
Can we just say it like that?
includes add sustainability section to monthly newsletter? Is that what it's called, the monthly newsletter? Is there a name of it?
It's called
I've never seen their monthly news.
South Suburban Parks and Recreation Monthly Report.
Okay,
Wow.
there we go.
Yeah, it's got a ring to
Can we
it.
just make that the whole thing, Laura?
Parks and Rec
Recreation Monthly Report.
report.
Or we just get rid of that, schedule a report to the people and just, it can become 5 and it's. Thank you.
I don't think you need to say pre-existing, because they'll know what that is, I hope. We need to say a section on sustainability, so that they know it will, or an actual paragraph on it.
Transparency with that, we kind of, oh, this is more to do with. Transparency in planning, we've just talked about.
Yeah, we have that now. They are legally required by the state of Colorado to have a certain amount of data and finances, and they do. The board elections feels more fuzzy when I did a lot of.
It's very
It's
fuzzy.
so messy.
You only get one.
I don't know if
pass.
I don't know if data, if y'all have specific examples of what you want, but whatever I wanted was there that they had.
Budget and.
All of that's there. It's a giant document. It's not fun, but it's there.
I mean, we could also, if transparency of data is important, we could also move that up to the action plan to say like, make things like the greenhouse gas inventory accessible to the public or something like that. And like make that part of that line item, and then this is specific to the board elections.
In the past, it's been difficulty trying to get a hold of the budget and trying to get a hold of operations.
I found it all.
You know what I'm saying? You can find it now and those concerns.
Yeah.
Probably not something we need to highlight in this.
I mean, you might have follow-up questions on it, but I did find it.
Oh, sure.
I had a lot of follow-up questions, but I found it.
Yeah, well, and it's the budget for the entire district. It's not specific to sustainability, so it's like.
But it is specific for each city and sometimes for each park, depending.
So maybe transparency of data isn't what we're.
I feel like it's from what I've heard, it's the board elections, the fact that that's not.
Well, yeah, because what happens is you have to specifically request a mail-in ballot. And if you don't, your only alternative is to go to one of the few polling places at pretty specific times. And, it makes for a very, very strange election.
So maybe more than transparency, it needs to be more of a
Better
maybe consider
Possibility?
just sending out mail-in ballots to everyone in the district for your elections. I mean, it's gonna involve a huge cost to them, but it's also,
It is a really big cost to
it's,
them.
they have a pretty massive budget and you win a seat on that board with like 5,000 votes.
Yeah,
Does that have a place in the sustainability recommendations?
I guess if you wanted each candidate to say what their stance was on.
We can compel a candidate to do anything as part of the,
And if you know that they were compelled to do it, you might want to.
I mean, we can't say to a candidate from board that you must do what's on this operations agreement.
Maybe there'd be like a little more competition for the platform. Like, I'm running because I care about XYZ thing. I don't even know if that exists right now.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I don't think it's not our job to make citizens care about sustainability. I mean, it kind of is, but like in regards to when someone's running for candidacy, I don't want to determine what they do or don't run on. But I think making the board elections more broadly accessible would probably bring that kind of thing to light anyway, but some focus on, I think the right word, broadening is not the right word, but like,
Banding.
yeah, kind of.
Accessibility. So
I mean, yeah, like.
a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like very unclear how to even do it, and then even if you knew how these elections work,
Yeah.
you have to take certain steps and it's.
Right.
Like it's a random day in May.
Could we not be very specific on this one and just say, consider ways to make the, you know what I mean? And like kind of leave that up to them? I don't know.
I can't imagine what incentives they're gonna have
To do.
to find their own way to like.
Okay, so it's another one where we need to give them some specifics.
Well, I feel like this one too, number 6 is maybe more coming from the perspective of Littleton as a jurisdiction rather than just this sustainability advisory board. Like, we don't want this just for the sustainability part, we want it so our residents have more of a voice, right? Like, it's a
Right.
bigger picture.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and
I think this is a big ask.
Step a little bit.
Inaccessible.
I think you'd literally just say like, you need to send mail-in ballots to every district.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right?
Every other minimal body is
Yeah.
elected.
The only thing that I vote on is just South Suburban. And I think you could make it number 6, not even to something, send in mail-in ballots.
All eligible residents.
Just get rid of the rest.
I think you could say maybe increase accessibility by sending mail-in ballots, because I want the accessible piece to kind of be there.
So right now, you have to sign a form saying I want
Yeah.
a ballot.
You have to go online and request it.
You could be on their permanent vote, early voter, or absentee voter list, whatever they call it. And so you're saying, that no one should have to fill out that form, you should just send out to every voter.
You got an election, send it out.
That is a
Massive cost.
massive cost.
Yeah, legally in Colorado, you have to then send out a blue book for any election that you send a mail-in ballot.
Just for our voters alone, it'd be close to $100,000.
Compared to their budget and the sort of relative infrequency of their elections, it's like, that is a fair.
Some xeriscaping and got rid of some mowing, they could.
Metro Fire does.
Isn't that right?
Wait, so is the application for an absentee ballot, it has to be like printed out and signed?
Can they afford it?
It's,
It's not even like, I can't even do it, like, I'm on their website now and there's not like a electronic form. It's like, here's the application, it's like a PDF.
You probably, or you send it via email back if you fill it out.
It said no electronic signatures are permitted.
Then,
But
yeah.
but you
that's
can
what
scan
that
it and
is.
email it back.
Yes.
we can increase election accessibility. There you go.
Can Always ask, they'll sit there.
It's crazy. It's like print it out, sign it, scan it back in, or like mail it in.
Yeah, it's like
So,
passport.
so now number 7, let's get progress. Revisions to
Basically
what
published for the entire
standards?
season, so like.
I think that that was the one that y'all were saying, like, we need an operating agreement so that we don't go, 50 or 60 years without looking at it.
Say that, revisit, your operating agreement with Littleton every 5 years.
It's reasonable.
Yeah, considering the last time it was 30, 40, 50, like 5 sounds great.
I think that's pretty good.
That's just thing. I'll figure out how to maybe.
Is there anything in there on them educating the public on sustainability issues? You want them to be an educator of the public?
I think they gotta start educating them. Sorry.
They want to talk about it as part of their action plan, great.
We hear ya, we hear ya.
We'll go out and then we want them reporting out in different places, so.
Hopefully it's a part of that.
No, I mean, do you want them to provide services when it comes to being a sustainability educator, do you want them to host classes? Do you want them to have workshops, have an annual conference? I mean, is there any role do you see in them increasing awareness about sustainability? Is there, and so maybe nothing, I'm just, what other elements do you not have?
Partner with them on a cleanup or something, partner with the library, city's library.
I think that's also something that we can leave to like the action plan development. Like if it ends up in the action plan, then like,
Let that citizen advisory board come up with.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
Cause yes, I agree. I like that, but like, I don't wanna,
Yeah.
Yeah,
dictate too much.
so back to number 3, fortunately.
I think we just say we expect.
I like that.
Honestly, enforcement is gonna get so complicated.
In order to keep Littleton as a partner, we expect you to.
Yeah, right.
Very
Yeah, I just like, we hope and we expect.
Is that like?
Start with hope.
You can just make it one line, I think.
Okay.
We hope and expect that South Suburban, what did I say earlier? I can't remember.
I feel like good faith agreement was put out, but I don't have to use those words.
I also think this could probably be like the last item.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We expect a good faith partnership between the city and the district on this topic, something like that.
Lead with hope. We hope and expect. We
Yeah.
hope for
That is
and
more
expect.
positive rather than like,
Stay on.
yeah,
On sustainability and stewardship topics.
we hope for a good faith partnership.
Otherwise, we'll publicize your misdeeds.
We just get rid of the one we got. And then, but Drew wanted.
Instead of expect,
Yeah, could you say hope for?
we hope for a good faith partnership.
It's coming off a little, I'm not mad.
Because
at it.
again, they don't hopefully have any reason to say no, 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 right? They just don't know.
Should that actually be a numbered item?
The only one that's not numbered is what you're addressing specifically to city council. And the
But
rest
then,
are,
like, a good faith agreement, like, that's not something we're asking for in the agreement, right? Or is it?
Even if they sign some, right? If they agree to something.
You're just giving recommendations to the council.
Right.
And so,
I just, when I look at these items, I think of like each line item is something that we expect to be present in the operating agreement. And so stuff like that line item of like, we expect a good faith agreement, to me, doesn't seem like something, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe
You're right.
they're,
And really,
something like that.
the enforcement is by signing it.
I would just say we hope.
We withhold if we don't agree. Once we agree, then you do what you agree to do.
Just
Yeah.
sounds nicer. Doesn't sound as bossy.
We're gonna be firm, but
I
not
like that. Nice.
Cool. That's pretty much mission accomplished.
Let's have a schedule, yeah.
cool.
We accomplished something.
So we should save this.
Oh my gosh.
Please do.
I have a logistical question. So the study session is on the 25th. By when are the packets made? Of which, yeah.
So
You just
2
do
weeks
it.
prior, we're supposed to send them in. They actually get shared with the public the week prior.
And I guess that raises the question of, do we want to physically be there to present this to them?
On the 25th?
Yeah.
I think that you should be.
The whole thing that we're like going and talking.
You're presenting.
Okay.
You have 45 minutes, you're on the schedule, I got it all set for
It's on my calendar.
March 25th. I mean, if you can't come, you can't come, but
But this is your annual chance to be in front of council and talk to them about anything and everything.
Is it 6:30?
6:30.
6, okay.
it's just right there, right? And then all the rest of the meetings are like regularly scheduled for the rest of the year for the first Wednesday of the month for this board. And it's on the city calendar. So if there are dates that we need to change, we can talk about that.
So for the study session on the 25th, is it specific to South Suburban? Or if this is our one time to get in front of them, like,
This is your one time to get in
Okay.
front of them, but it's not, it's minimum of one time. So.
yeah.
You can go back to them for something else for a different study session. The biggest barrier will be planning ahead and making sure I can get y'all on the agenda for when and what we want.
Okay, I'm just curious if we do have this time in front of them, and maybe this is more of an agenda item for February's meeting, but is there something else that we want to take to them in March besides, like, this is big? Yeah. So, I know we only have, 19 minutes, ish, but maybe that's something we put on the agenda for February, of just other priorities.
Please.
For council.
There's so many things we could talk about.
Here's some things we want to go pursue next.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, that would be good.
I'm just gonna
Run by them.
to council.
So we're having a sidebar.
The top of it.
Huh?
It's supposed to be. On there.
I know, Scott. I know.
Studies on
Hey,
that.
hey, I'm just saying, like, you
I know.
saw the community coming.
Talking waste hauling.
Missing middle housing.
Yeah, next week.
Waste hauling?
Poor Steve.
Oh, we're having our regional waste summit next week. It is a closed meeting. It is 2 council members or each city that's involved in the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment Technical Assistance Program, so TASC, through CDPHE, and we're partnering with different nonprofits that are helping through that program. And so it's Centennial, Sheridan, Englewood, and Littleton. And it's 2 council members from each city, as well as just all of the results from the study. So that no decisions are being made, it's just information for them and understanding our grades and scores on our waste diversion.
I would love a short update on that at our next meeting.
Sure.
That'd be awesome.
I mean, yeah, on what happens at the waste summit, not what the report is.
I mean, maybe like high level relevant results for Littleton and
Yeah.
what was like, I don't know,
mean-
what you can talk about in 15, 20 minutes.
Right now or for next?
I figured next time, yeah, I figured, cause you said it's happening next week, or what'd you say? Yeah.
I mean, I know what the results are of the study and what we're planning to talk about, but I don't know what the different,
Give us
council
something
members
to
are gonna,
report.
are gonna,
Yeah.
well, I can report out about that.
Okay.
Next time for sure.
Yeah, cause I think that probably might play into the discussion of single hauler waste or limited hauler waste.
It will.
Or contracted hauler.
Yeah, there we go. I think that's the phrase we used.
All of those options are being presented to them as considerations.
Yeah, so-
There'll be different policy recommendations depending on the city, because not all of the cities are at the same place in this conversation.
As in have 14 different haulers. Can't remember what the number was.
Yeah.
So,
At least.
At least 17 and counting.
Trash and
Um,
trash.
Is there,
Really?
that's
Super
bizarre.
obnoxious,
Is
yeah.
there anything else that y'all want to? Like, I can start going over the plan, but we have 15 minutes, so I could just pick it up next time with an update on the Waste Summit. Do I wanna pick people to maybe present or that wanna prepare to present for this?
It's just nice, you guys will be around the table, it'll be really comfortable conversation. You know, I mean, really, it's kind of a fun chance to talk. If you have anything that you wish we were doing that we haven't started doing, you can talk about that. Have council get excited about it, you know. There's no official action that comes out of this. It really is just your chance to familiarize yourself with them to familiarize with you and, you know, share, you know, brag about the work you're doing. Or, you know, limit the fact that you haven't got to do whatever work you want to do.
So South Suburban, waste hauling. It's on that agenda. Not maybe.
It's on our list. Stick to the top line. Goals and put it into action.
Can we pull that up real fast, just while we have 10 minutes and?
We've also gotten a lot of
No, my computer is just not.
Yeah, I think it's also worth revisiting some of the public comment.
Sharing
Send your-
fiasco.
Can you pull it up though, just?
Oh.
I'm like losing
The action plan?
stuff like that.
Yeah, but it's like the sharing is.
What did you say it was the contract?
Is it, you just want to use Word or is it when you use?
Contracted waste,
It's anything related to.
contracted waste hauler,
Then it doesn't have.
which means that we will contract.
It's been an
waste
issue
hauler, And
for a while.
I have to join, but
Yeah,
can, cause hopefully it'll
Can
be
share out whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's.
The action plan. So you just, go to the ESP website.
The March one.
Study
They just want to look
Yeah.
at the first
I
page.
think so. It's a Tuesday.
So I can just talk through it without it being up here. Our top priorities were complete a greenhouse gas inventory and create a climate action plan, which is partially being done. Hire a sustainability coordinator, check, educate and inform the public about environmental efforts, get people out of cars, electrify the built environment, transportation and lawn and garden equipment, incentivize water conservation, provide every building with recycling and composting options, allow the ESB to act as an accountability body for South Suburban, and lastly, implement community-supported agriculture at the Littleton Museum, or EG. Those were the top highest priority action items called out.
Maybe scroll down.
I mean, I'm all about this, supporting agriculture, but. What do you think? What do you want to talk to council about as our? Give a couple, three.
Just as long as waste hauling is on that list, please.
What did you say?
Just as long as cause waste hauling was not on this list, but I think it should have been. So I would like to make sure we talk. to
Maybe like
citizens about
a tweak of the provide every building with recycling and composting options.
Yes.
It's going to be mandatory.
Because even city council said to us that they're hearing that same thing from the community, so.
It's like prohibitively expensive for businesses to recycle in Littleton.
So all of that,
Single hauler would make all waste hauling cheaper, but
yes. So that's my priority after South Suburban.
yeah, I think I'm going to have all of the data to support that, the study that I'm a part of, cause they sorted through like, I think 10,000 tons of trash.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
We did that at my school, but it was like one little. And I was like, oh, this is so gross.
I mean, the electrification stuff, really important too, but, it's expensive. There's a lot of money out there, so I'm trying to figure out some of that financing and working backwards for like the grid capacity for some of the buildings and the sites. And also in terms of educating and informing the public, as part of my list, I've been building out all of these different resources and what already exists. But, there's so much out there. Maybe I should just like start a running list and maybe bring y'all a draft and see if y'all, or just have it even published and if y'all have anything to add to it that you know of.
Do we have, we had talked about having a, like even just a webpage on the city's website that kind of says, here's Like, we
so
have that, right?
I created a draft, well, I don't like the one, so I created a draft page and in it, I wanna do, or what I'm thinking is that there'll be like sort of 5 subsections, one being like if I'm a resident, if I'm a business, if I'm a contractor, if I'm a developer, or if I'm interested in learning more about the Environmental Stewardship Board, then it can redirect appropriately to pages that exist, and then I can create more of a clearinghouse for resources. I've been talking to the webmaster and I'm working with the Tri-Cities Business Coordinator to figure out the business side and then trying to work internally on the contractor and developer. The resident side, I probably could use some gaps in for whatever y'all know too. But I can do sort of the research and just like this, I can bring something to y'all. Or I could just publish it and be like, what should I add?
Yeah, I think you.
It's pretty low stakes, I think. But I think that will get at the educating, inform the public, and then I'm trying to sort of figure out like events and how all of that works. I don't know what else is on here that y'all are excited about.
Well, I did want to revisit some of the public comment stuff and see if any of these were things we wanted to add to our list of things to talk about. Trees, right, whether it's a tree trust or, the trees at Costco. Another thing that was talked about was, gas stations and car washes limit. I didn't totally.
Yeah, I have,
everything about it.
I actually need to do more research on that unless anyone has.
Lakewood has a new.
Yeah, I wrote down Louisville, Denver, and Lakewood.
And then the paving.
South Suburban, right?
Yeah.
Use of pesticides, native planting, ULUC improvements.
Yeah, I'm getting in onto hopefully onto that a little bit more. It's more complicated to make those.
Yeah.
So it's a much bigger process to make those changes, but I wanna start getting in on those conversations early on as they're happening, but some have, it's like left the station before I started or before I knew about it. It's a little harder, so. I'm also hoping to establish like an internal green team so I can actually keep track of what everyone's doing, because it's very difficult to know all of the things that are happening. I'm trying to get y'all the answers that you want for all of this.
Appreciate it. And the updates on the sustainability plan are all good to see too, so thanks for doing that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And we'll go through it, next time, as well as the waste summit and how that goes. I'm working with the transportation team to get people out of cars is
It's a big ask.
changing car culture, and structure is so much more difficult than just those few words look like on the page, right? But it's gonna probably be a really big chunk of my inventory. I can already see that it will be, it's transportation. I guess that one. I'm already seeing the data come in, that's pretty substantial.
We can, continue talking about this at our next meeting in a couple of weeks. We made progress today, about ourselves. Finalize what we talked about today and then we'll do it again if we want. What else we can talk with council about, so.
And we'll be meeting in 2 weeks, so we'll see each other soon.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I'll come back with like a report out on the waste summit. I might not, update the plan since we didn't go through it unless I have updates, which case I'll highlight and send to y'all. Is there anything else did you want me to talk to Reed about his ideas of enforcement mechanisms, or you think just?
I think the way we left it.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you want me to investigate? Do we want to look at next time the South Suburban related recs, or just sort of send that as attachment to council or ignore it, like the ones that I picked out from the plan?
I think it's still a good just attachment
Yeah.
to include as part of like basically our packet would be one pager and then
Yeah,
I think that's like 2 pages of.
it'd be,
Yeah, I think it's just a good reference.
Yeah.
Personally.
So they don't have to.
Cause also I think it's good to reference back to like, here's some work we already did that talks about, some South Suburban overlap.
for sure.
We did that you approved.
Yeah.
Right.
Adopted, yeah.
Any staff or member reports before we? adjourn?
I have a new job. So
Oh.
I now work for the International City County Management Association. This is not breaking news, Mike, but yeah, so I am the new program manager for the Clean Energy Program. ICMA is a membership organization for professionals in city management. But yeah, amazing. I'll see you at some upcoming conferences, I bet. But we also provide programming to everyone. So you don't have to be a member, local government professional to get those services. A lot of the funding comes from the federal government. So we have a lot of local jurisdiction focused clean energy free technical assistance, many programs. So Laura, if you want to talk about it, I have a lot of things I can share with you that the city can participate in and hopefully help make progress on.
That'd be great. I'm starting a boot camp that I was accepted to through the local infrastructure hub. So I'm gonna try to figure out how to navigate whatever is left of federal grants in the next year.
On coal and diesel now.
Anything you do through us is free, and it's EV charging, solar, wind is coming, not that maybe Littleton's the exact right place for that, but yeah, so lots of options in the clean energy space.
Colorado. Yeah, okay.
All right, anything else?
Yeah, congrats on the new role. That's awesome.
NREL, National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and the research is fine, but I'm not doing research. When it's more applied.
One announcement for you, February 4th, 11 a.m. will be groundbreaking ceremony with Reynolds Landing.
Oh, cool.
What was the date?
February 4th at 11 a.m.
I'll walk down.
Exactly. I actually think that part of the ceremony is going up to Breckenridge for lunch. No, I'm serious. I think that's part of their.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Love it.
So it'll be done then, or
No,
it's
we're
the
not.
start?
It's just
Oh,
starting.
sorry, I
The river will officially be closed to recreation for the next year.
Yeah,
At
okay.
that point, yeah.
Is the trail still open, like?
The trail will continually be open. It will be moved from time to time.
Yeah, just like reroute it or something.
Exactly.
So is it actually like if I walk down at 11, people will be down there?
Pictures and whatnot, dignitaries,
Shovel.
giving speeches, golden shovels.
Apparently. That's awesome.
I love a good gold shovel.
So does Steve Barr. He was geeked out. Do I get a gold shovel? Yeah.
Present.
Right now.
Amy wanted me to talk about this.